It's time for Global Insight, where we speak to experts from around the world on issues making headlines. Europe faces an energy crisis as Russia announced further cuts to its energy supplies to the continent. Last week, Russia's state-owned gas company Gazprom said it would halve the amount of gas running through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Germany to just 20% of its capacity. This has prompted concern over whether Europe will have enough gas to manage throughout the winter, as Russia last year supplied 40% of Europe's gas supplies. Over the next 7 months, EU countries will aim to reduce gas usage by 15%, but this is on a voluntary basis with exemptions set for certain countries. And there's also doubt over whether the EU can find alternative supplies. Since Moscow's invasion of Ukraine, governments not only in Europe but also around the world have been rethinking their energy security policies, and we discuss how the discussion is moving forward today with Paul J. Saunders, President of Energy Innovation Reform Project, and Park Jin-ho, Vice President for Research and Dean of KENTECH Institutes. Thank you both so much for joining us today. My first question to you, Mr. Saunders. Now, EU member states in reaction, they agreed to cut gas consumption by 15% over the next 7 months by March next year. And this, of course, is an attempt to show a unified front against Russia as well. But how feasible is this plan? I mean, and also, where will most of the cuts have to be made?
Well, it's likely certainly to be challenging. I expect the cuts will have to come primarily from the energy sector and from the industrial sector, especially the petrochemical sector. I think that European governments will be quite cautious in doing anything that could undermine public support for their policies. So I think they will try to shield households to the extent that they can. But it will be difficult, and it's an environment in which everyone will have to pitch in.
And Mr. Park, the heat that Europe has been facing, this unprecedented heat wave, how has it really affected the energy crisis on the continent and also around the world?
Oh, yes, the heat wave affected the energy supply and demand very severely, not just in Europe, but globally in many countries. In the middle of this energy and food volatility caused by war in Ukraine. The heat wave also affected the farming in many regions due to severe drought, and in addition caused severe problems in supplying cooling water for power plants, including nuclear power plants, especially in France. The worst is yet to come. Geoscientists say that this summer will be the coolest one ever. The next summer will be another coolest summer ever in the future. The geopolitical landscape has suddenly changed in the last 2 to 3 years, and it is affecting the global energy market and industry quite extensively. Energy security now has become the utmost importance in government policies worldwide, with roller-coasting prices of petroleum, coal, and gas. In Europe, for example, natural gas occupies 25 to 30% of the total energy required in the region, and the EU relies heavily on Russian natural gas by 40%. They are currently having difficulties for the summer, but they have to prepare for the worst situation in the coming winter. The reorganization of the global value chain due to the US-China trade conflict is also affecting the global energy market quite significantly. Free trades between countries now are shifting to more strategic partnership between a group of countries. In short, I can say that the global energy market is very volatile now, and the uncertainty level is even going up, which makes energy policy much more complicated. Yeah.
And Mr. Saunders, you said that it's going to be a bit tough to do this, to actually make this 15% cut on a voluntary basis. And we've already seen some resistance in Spain. So what is it going to take to actually make this work?
Well, I think it'll take a combination of 2 or 3 things. Certainly, first of all, I think that governments in Europe will do everything they can to try to rally public support for these cuts on, I guess I would call it on a patriotic basis. You know, it's necessary for you as citizens to stand up and do your part at this very challenging time. I'm sure that'll be a big element of it. At the same time, you know, we may see governments trying to implement some mandatory reductions. I expect those would probably be implemented initially on a selective basis rather than comprehensively, and again, likely with the desire, you know, to shield voters as much as possible from impacts.
And Mr. Park, well, what does it mean to have an energy security strategy, something that many governments are thinking about rethinking now? What are the vital roles that the government must play in this scenario?
Well, it's a good question. The energy security strategy requires all the tactics and actions needed for the country and its citizens to run their everyday lives comfortably by securing the energy supply reliability to offset the demands, as well as to run their economies in a sustainable manner. The government plays, in that sense, the most important role in the energy security and reliability by providing policy measures to do so, from the management of energy prices, technology developments, to the incentive schemes for the early stage deployments. One example we can learn from the EU is a recent Repower EU communication prepared by the European Commission in March 22, and the recent 15% reduction is actually the extension of this Repower EU. The Repower EU focuses on three major objectives. The first one is the reduction of EU's dependence on Russian fossil sources. And the second one is the stabilization of natural stockpiles. The last one is the emergency response plan for energy price surge. I think this is a good example of the role of a government in handling the energy security strategy. Yeah, right. Thank you.
So thinking in terms of stages and rather long term as well. And Mr. Saunders, Europe placed sanctions on Russian coal in April, and further import bans are to start on August 10th. So what impact is this going to have on Europe? And can the EU really reduce its reliance on Russian natural gas in the short term?
Well, certainly the European Union and individual European countries have already reduced their reliance on Russian gas significantly as this crisis has unfolded. And as a practical matter, they may have no choice because this is a question that's not up to the European governments alone. We've seen Russia periodically selectively reducing its gas supplies to individual countries in Europe, and to the extent that President Putin and others in his government view Europe as inevitably reducing or maybe even eliminating energy imports from Russia, then the Russian government has every incentive to try to cut off those supplies or reduce supplies in the way that Moscow believes will have the greatest possible impact politically in Europe. So I think we're seeing really both sides trying to, on the Russian side, certainly to use energy for leverage. On the European side, of course, trying to eliminate that leverage and trying to use Russia's financial reliance on Europe as leverage. And we're just going to see over the course of the coming months who has greater stamina.
And Mr. Saunders, well, the question is, with winter just a few months away, how will Europe get through the colder seasons?
Well, that's a big question. There are a variety of factors. Of course, we have to see, how hot is the summer? How much gas does Europe need over the summer? How much gas can they consume versus putting into storage? Then in the winter, obviously, how cold is the winter? So certainly European leaders hope that through a combination of conservation and new supplies and other approaches that they'll be able to manage. I think as a practical matter, neither we nor Europeans will really know until the winter whether this will work and how it will work. There are too many unknowns, starting with the weather and Russia's conflict.
Well, in the face of all these unknowns, Mr. Park, the energy crisis in Europe has triggered concerns all over the world, really. And does South Korea face the danger of such crisis? Do we have sufficient storage or alternative options available to us?
Yes, we can face the danger of energy crisis if we do not prepare properly and proactively. I think that the impact that Korean citizens will feel directly from the natural gas supply is rather limited, since South Korea imports natural gas in liquefied natural gas, LNG form, and the major imports are coming from Qatar, Australia, USA, and Indonesia, and relies minimally on the Russia gas. The one important characteristic about the natural gas from Russia is that it is PNG, the pipeline natural gas. And it should be noted that the EU imports most of the fossil energies from Russia, even though others come from Norway, Algeria, USA, and Qatar. And South Korea can have impact in rather indirect manner, caused by the global shortage in energy supply and the corresponding price increase in LNG in particular. As you may know, the South Korea imports more than 90% of its primary energy from overseas, and we are currently observing a trade deficit for the last 3 months in a row, even though our export has increased during that period. Increased import in the primary energy exceeded the exports of our goods. Increased energy costs can increase the logistics costs and again cause inflation. So, as you know, the Korean economy largely depends on the export, and the export is the main driver of the Korean economy. So if this volatile situation in the global energy market continues, South Korea will have to also suffer from this global volatility. Yes.
So, as you said, Mr. Park, it's vital to plan ahead for the possible eventualities. And what are the short and long-term strategies needed at this point to address the energy shortage?
Well, as I emphasized previously, the short-term energy strategy should focus on the energy security and reliability. And to do that, we have to utilize all the available tools we have. This includes reconstructing the optimal energy mix portfolio in our nation, utilizing nuclear, gas, and renewables, etc., and reducing the energy consumption as much as possible. And in other sense, that to try to electrify the non-electric energies which uses fossil fuels, such as heat and fuel. And the strategy to mitigate the global volatility in energy markets should be based on securing and diversifying energy imports, managing the energy prices using tax schemes, as well as related policy measures. And support for the individual, vulnerable individuals and corporations should also be precisely targeted and properly managed. But in the long run, we have to prepare for the future. As we all know, that by October 2021, over 140 countries have declared carbon neutral by 2050 to address the global challenge of climate crisis. And 14 countries, including South Korea, even legislated the carbon neutral goals. And the energy transition towards low carbon society is currently in progress, and the expansion of clean energy such as renewables and hydrogens are underway. It has to be strongly, developed and supported by
so it looks like we need a variety of alternative options available in order to really procure energy security going forward. And well, I'm afraid we're out of time today. That was Paul J. Saunders, President of Energy Innovation Reform Project, and Park Jin-ho, Vice President for Research and Dean of KENTECH Institutes. Thank you both so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.